Hi, I am Jackie Schechner. Welcome back to our next session here at the Virtual Energy Forum. I'm really excited to present to you Kateri Callahan, who is with the Alliance to Save Energy. She has more than 20 years of experience in policy advocacy, fundraising, coalition building, and organizational management in her position as the president of the Alliance to Save Energy. This is a non-government organization headquartered in Washington, D.C., and your mission is to advance energy efficiency worldwide to achieve a healthier economy, a cleaner environment, and greater energy security. And Kateri is going to present this wonderful presentation to us today. I want to encourage you to get in and submit your questions. We're going to be chatting back and forth. We definitely want your feedback. And also everything you present will be available afterwards on the website at the Virtual Energy Forum, so you can really dig in, take a look for yourself. So
great.
I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thanks, Jackie. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to do just a couple of things in the presentation today. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes on the Alliance to Save Energy to provide some context for why we're such proponents of energy efficiency. Then I want to talk about the imperatives that we have for energy efficiency given the situation that we have with our economy, with energy, growth in energy demand, and with climate change. And then, because the purpose of this was to really talk about the environment, the business environment for energy efficiency, we'll talk about public policy, which is creating a lot of the environment around and driving, if you will, implementation of energy efficiency. And then finally, I'll do a little crystal balling for what that's worth and talk a little bit about what we see as the future for energy efficiency and what will be coming at us in the next couple of years. And hopefully that'll help those people doing business planning and watching to have some further input. So first, what's the Alliance? You can see here some pretty pictures of members of Congress. The Alliance to Save Energy, as Jackie mentioned, was created to advance energy efficiency. It's really kind of deja vu all over again. We were created in the late 1970s when there was an oil embargo and resulting high energy prices and lines at the pump, much that we're seeing today. And the vision for the Alliance to Save Energy was actually shaped by two sitting members of Congress, then Senator Hubert Humphrey and from Minnesota, and a Republican, Chuck Percy, from Illinois. And they wanted to do what really has been effectuated in the Alliance, and that was to build a strategic alliance between government, between industry, between academia, and NGOs. And so you can see the result here. I just have a sprinkling of those that have come together. We now have over 150 associates, everyone from big box retailers like Walmart and Home Depot to energy providers to banks, Bank of America, and a number of others that have come together. We operate like a trade association, even though we're an NGO, in that we do research, policy analysis, advocacy, programmatic work, outreach, and communications. We haven't been sitting on our hands for the last 30 years, even though we're at deja vu all over again. This is a chart based on some information that the Alliance to Save Energy has put together. And because in large measure of the standards, appliance standards we've put in place, improvements in technology, building energy codes, corporate average fuel economy standards for vehicles, we have become very efficient, very much more efficient in the United States than we were 30 years ago. And this chart shows you that energy efficiency is actually contributing more to meeting our energy demand today than any other resource, including king coal. So we've done a lot. The result of that, I'm trying to move this forward, is very important when we look at climate change, which we'll talk about. We're avoiding, because we're more efficient, 2.5 billion tons a year of CO2. And very importantly, for businesses and consumers alike, we're avoiding $400 billion in energy costs that otherwise we would be paying on an annual basis. The difficulty is, and the imperatives that are setting the business environment today is, even though we are becoming more efficient, we are using more energy than we're able to produce in the United States, and the gap is growing wider. We have only about 5% of the world's population. We own less than 3% of the world's oil reserves, and yet we're gobbling up about a quarter of what the world uses every day, and the gap is getting wider. So that sets up an energy security imperative for the United States to look at what we can do. Increasing supplies has a lot of challenges to it. Tackling demand, we think, is a better first solution, though it won't get us completely there. Secondly, energy use in the U.S. is very much a pocketbook issue, and particularly now with the price of gas over $4 a gallon and going higher every day, people are seeing it. The average, this chart is showing you increases in what people are spending in the homes and increase in the price of oil. But right now, an American family of 4 is paying about $6,000 annually between the car in their driveway and their home. And that's more than 10% of the median income before taxes in the U.S. So it's a pocketbook issue. Finally, it's a climate issue, and that has come more to the fore and something that our Congress was grappling with just last week. In the United States, as I said, we consume about 25% of the world's energy. We're also responsible, therefore, for about 21% of the world's carbon emissions. And if you look at this, just our homes and our buildings that we live in are putting out as much on an annual basis as Japan and India combined, their entire economies. So this is really an imperative. When you look at where that energy is being used and where those emissions are coming from, it's surprising to many people that it really is the buildings we live in. It's our homes, and it's the malls, and it's the office buildings in places like we are today, Jackie, that are really causing that. You can look at the blue line on this chart and see that industry, first from demand destruction in the 80s, early 90s, we saw a dip in energy use there, but a flattening out. And a lot of that really is coming from the fact that our industrial sector is becoming more efficient, and we'll talk a bit more about that later.
Let me just jump in real quickly. When you talk about buildings, are we talking about residential buildings? Are we talking about commercial buildings? Some combination of both?
We're talking of both. And residential buildings in the United States, they account for 5% of the world's CO2 emissions. So they're the same roughly as Japan or India, just the houses we live in. So if you look at the combination of them, it's about 9%. Buildings consume in the U.S. 40% of the energy we use. They consume 75% of the electricity, and that's just our homes and office buildings, retail facilities. It's not industrial structures that we're talking about.
When we talk about the emissions of buildings and that sort of thing, I'm assuming that in energy efficiency we're also talking about the appliances and things you use within your home. One of the questions that came in, and I just kind of wanted to work this in for you, it's Robbie Mickelson, I think the last name is, with their automatic savings of somewhere between 30 and 70% on energy and water consumption, what, if any, policy steps are being taken to include low-flow shower heads and toilets in new construction codes?
Right. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but let me answer that to say that we as an organization have been working to increase the energy efficiency appliance standards that are already in place for things like air conditioners and refrigerators, but we're also putting new ones in place. For example, in the energy bill that was passed in December 2007, we worked with industry and with other advocates to develop standards to phase out inefficient incandescent light bulbs in the United States by the year 2014. It will have an enormous impact on energy use, CO2 loadings, and dollar savings. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. This shows you what we can do. This is a chart from McKinsey and Company that looked at the growth in energy demand that we anticipate in the next between now and the year 2020. And it looked at investments. This is a global look at it. For a global investment of only $170 billion, that sounds like a lot, but we can essentially take growth in energy demand from 2.2% down to under 1%. And that $170 billion investment is going to reap $900 billion in energy savings annually. If you look at where the investments need to be made, you can see residential at the top. Sector is a large potential. That's where a lot of the investment, $40 billion, is recommended to be made. And then you skip down to the industrial sector, again, to this audience, $83 billion of investment. That sounds like a lot of money. It's only about 0.4% of global GDP today. And these are investments that have an internal rate of return of $17 or more. So they are really going to return quickly and a lot of money for those that invest. The investment, so we say, okay, there's this great opportunity. We can lower demand. We can deal with CO2 emissions. Why isn't it just happening? I mean, it seems like this is just a sensible thing. There are problems, market failures that we have in our system right now that have to be addressed, and policy will play a big role. Let me give you an example because you look a little quizzical.
Well, I was looking for an example.
The person that builds your home isn't the person that's going to be paying the bills typically, right? You're going to buy your home. So it's a bit more expensive to make it more efficient, to load in the insulation, to put in the Energy Star labeled windows and doors. But you're going to begin saving immediately if you live in that more efficient home. So So we have to deal with that. It's called a split incentive. Same thing with commercial buildings. The people that build the buildings aren't the ones paying the bills. Even the people that operate the